I found a plane ticket, just one. First class, Paris. My CEO husband, Mark, had told me he was flying out for a crucial 2-week business negotiation. A single ticket didn't make sense. CEOs don't fly alone, not when they're closing a multi-million-dollar deal. I didn't panic about the affair. That was the least of my problems. I got surgical. I dug deeper. The person he was flying with? It wasn't some young assistant. It was Marcus Thorne, his direct rival, the man trying to sink our company for months. They weren't just sharing a bed. They were planning a hostile takeover, and they were doing it on my dime. This is the story of how I took down the 2 most powerful men in my industry, and how I made sure the only thing Mark signed in the end was his own firing notice. Mark and I were the definition of a power couple, not just in the business sense, but in the lifestyle sense. We were the cover photo for Success. Our home was featured in Architectural Digest. Our joint net worth was discussed almost reverently in the financial press. He was the CEO, brilliant and charismatic. I was Rebecca, the strategic mind, the one who handled the investors, the logistics, the real money, the quiet power behind the throne. For 10 years, we'd built this empire from nothing. 2 beautiful, polite children, a life that seemed, from the outside, utterly flawless. But perfection is often the best camouflage for a lie. The shift started subtly, about a year ago. It wasn't the usual affair cliches. He wasn't suddenly buying me lingerie or coming home smelling of perfume. Instead, he started becoming unavailable. His phone was on silent, face down, even during family dinner. His schedule got tighter, punctuated by cryptic meetings he called scaling up global infrastructure. I called it avoiding me. I accepted it because I was busy too. I was the glue holding our family and his public image together, and frankly, I was too arrogant to believe he'd risk all this for a cheap thrill. The lie finally collapsed the day he left for Paris. It was a cold Tuesday morning. He kissed me goodbye, a practiced, empty press of lips, smelling of his usual $300 cologne and the distinct metallic tang of a new suit. 2 weeks, Beck, he said, holding my face. Crucial negotiations, too critical for me to take you. He left. I spent 2 days in a strangely peaceful silence, catching up on sleep and non-corporate reading. Then I decided to do a good wife chore. I was cleaning out his suit jacket before sending it to the cleaners. That's when I found it, deep in the inside pocket, near the lining, crumpled like trash. The airline ticket jacket. I pulled out the boarding pass. The date was right. But the biggest shock wasn't the destination. It was the lack of a second ticket, just one. I stood in the silence of our $1 million closet, staring at that flimsy piece of paper. Who flies first class alone to a negotiation? No one. Not the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. Not Mark. He never traveled without an executive assistant or at least a security detail. He must have booked hers separately, I reasoned. But why hide the receipt? My first emotion wasn't heartbreak. It was the sharp metallic taste of suspicion. I didn't confront him. The moment I confronted him, I lost control of the narrative. I needed facts. I decided I was going to investigate like the strategic investor I was, not the betrayed wife he thought I was. My real investigation started with the numbers. I used my secure login, the one Mark forgot I still had, and logged into his corporate expense account. The flight charge was astronomical, $20,000. It screamed luxury, privacy, and a massive cover-up. But as I scrolled down the ledger, the one-time ticket purchase quickly became less interesting than a recurring anomaly. A monthly retainer for the past 6 months, exactly $15,000 to a shell corporation I didn't recognize, Global Insight Consulting. I ran the name through our legal database. Nothing. Deliberately obscured. I didn't waste time with the corporate lawyers who were all loyal to Mark. I called my old mentor, a ruthless financial forensics expert who owed me a massive favor from years ago. Rebecca, you're calling me about 15 grand a month? That's nothing for Mark. It's not the amount, it's the anonymity, I cut him off. Find the beneficial owner of Global Insight Consulting. 4 hours later, he called back. His voice was grim. The registered owner is a blind trust, but I traced the trustee to a partner at Thorne Enterprises, specifically Elizabeth Vance, Thorne's chief legal officer. The air left the room. My knees went weak, but not from sadness, from the sheer white-hot magnitude of the betrayal. It wasn't just an affair. It was a corporate espionage love nest. Mark wasn't sleeping with some random woman. He was sleeping with the right hand of Marcus Thorne, the man who was trying to bleed our company dry. Mark wasn't cheating on me for sex. He was cheating on me for leverage. He was trading my company's future for secrets whispered in a Ritz hotel room. This was betrayal on a biblical scale. The pain of the affair? Temporary. The threat to my financial empire? Unacceptable. I closed the laptop. My tears dried up. The betrayed wife was gone. The cold, calculating CEO had just taken the reins. I knew what I had to do. I didn't need a lawyer for a divorce. I needed a strategy for a hostile counter-takeover. My revenge would be twofold: destroying his marriage and destroying his career. And I knew exactly who the biggest loser in this situation was: Marcus Thorne himself. He just didn't know it yet. I reached for my phone, ready to make the most dangerous alliance of my life. The rage had passed. What remained was a cold, hard resolve. I was no longer interested in crying or smashing things. I was focused on asset protection and strategic annihilation. Mark's affair wasn't just infidelity. It was a hostile act against my life's work. My goal was no longer divorce. It was survival and then absolute destruction. I knew I couldn't trust anyone at our company yet. They were all Mark's loyalists, fed on his charisma and our stock options. I had to look outside for a partner, and there was only one person who hated Mark more than I did, and who had the immediate financial power to hurt him. I was going to ally with the devil. I got Marcus Thorne's private email from our corporate database. I didn't mince words. I didn't use flowery language. I sent him an email with just 3 words: "Check your wife's bank statement." I waited, my heart pounding a corporate rhythm, not a romantic one. I was expecting an explosion. Thorne called me back within the hour. His voice was a dangerous blend of panic, fury, and pure confusion. "Who is this?" he demanded, his voice tight. "And what the hell did you send me?" "The truth, Marcus," I answered calmly, my voice low, a contrast to his roar. "This is Rebecca Hawthorne, the woman your mistress's CEO husband is about to betray. Mark and your wife, Sarah, are not only sharing a first-class cabin in Paris, but they are planning a corporate coup against both of us." I laid out the financial evidence: the shell corporation, the $15,000 monthly payments, and the unauthorized movement of proprietary company data. Mark is feeding Sarah our internal blueprints, our market projections, and our leverage points. She's passing it to you, Marcus, but she's not loyal to you. She's loyal to the money Mark promised her. He's setting you up to be the fall guy in this hostile takeover, while he and Sarah walk away with the controlling interest. There was a long silence, heavy with the weight of millions of dollars and a ruined marriage. Thorne was calculating the financial and personal damage. "What do you want, Rebecca?" he finally asked. He respected power, and I was finally showing him mine. "I want Mark out, fired, blacklisted, and I want the company to survive. I want to partner with you to execute the counter-takeover. We split the assets, we sink them both." Marcus Thorne hated my husband more than he loved his wife. It was the perfect, chillingly rational alliance. Thorne and I began coordinating in secret, communicating only through heavily encrypted channels. We were 2 generals planning a war against the enemy they shared. My revenge had 3 precise phases. It required Mark to believe he was winning right up until the moment he lost everything. I accessed a secure internal memo detailing our projected Q4 earnings. I deliberately altered one key metric, inflating our projected operational costs by 30%. I then made sure this false memo was left prominently on Mark's laptop, saved under a file name he'd instantly recognize as critical. I knew Mark would immediately leak this insider trading information to Sarah to gain more leverage against Thorne. The goal was simple. Mark would trust the data, and so would Thorne. Thorne, acting on my false, inflated data, would make a strategic, public move. Since the projections looked dire, I instructed him to make a massive, visible stock buy right before the Paris trip ended. This move, based on the false cost projections, would look like a brilliant long-term play to the outside world, but it was financially unsound. It was the bait. It would give Mark confidence that Thorne was following the plan, his plan. The grand finale. While Mark and Sarah were overseas, jet-lagged and distracted by their victory lap, I would call an emergency board meeting. The board only cared about one thing: fiduciary duty. I wouldn't lead with the affair. I would lead with the money. I would present the hard evidence of Mark's corporate malfeasance, the $90,000 in unauthorized payments to the shell company, and then, critically, the true, unmanipulated Q4 numbers, which were actually better than expected. Mark's actions would be exposed not as infidelity, but as a deliberate attempt to tank the company's stock price for personal gain. The day before Mark and Sarah were due back, everything was in place. The board members were flying in. Thorne was preparing his massive buy-in, and I was practicing my presentation. I looked at Mark's empty side of the closet, the beautiful, expensive suits. He was a ghost in my life, and soon he would be a ghost in the company he founded. I pulled out my own suit, perfectly tailored, ready for the boardroom. I wasn't just a wife or a silent partner anymore. I was the one holding the axe. The game was no longer about love, it was about billions, and I was ready to play. Mark and Sarah landed at JFK late that Sunday night, jet-lagged, satisfied, and arrogant. They thought they had won. They thought they had secured their future, both financially and romantically. They didn't know their future had already been signed, sealed, and delivered. By me. Mark strutted into the office Monday morning, 30 minutes late. He looked smug, radiating the toxic confidence of a man who believes he is untouchable. He found a single embossed card on his massive mahogany desk. Emergency board meeting. Your presence is required. Now. He probably assumed it was a sudden celebration of his successful negotiation. He was wrong. When Mark walked into the boardroom, the air crackled with tension. The room was not celebratory, it was funereal. The entire board was seated, along with our company's chief financial officer, and I was standing at the head of the long mahogany table, dressed in a sharp, unforgiving black suit. Mark gave me a dismissive, patronizing nod. "What's the emergency, honey? Did you miss me that much?" His attempt at charm fell flat in the heavy silence. I didn't answer the question. I clicked the remote in my hand, and the projector screen flashed on behind me, showing the company logo. "Gentlemen, ladies," I began, my voice clear and utterly steady. "I have called this emergency meeting to discuss immediate changes in executive leadership, specifically the termination of Mark Hawthorne for gross misconduct and corporate espionage." Mark laughed, a big, booming executive laugh designed to fill the room and dismiss the messenger. "Is this a joke, Rebecca? Are you filing for divorce now? Don't make a scene." "I'm filing for more than that, Mark," I said, looking him dead in the eye, my gaze cold as ice. "I'm filing for control." I didn't waste time on sentiment. I went straight to the numbers. A blown-up image of the crumpled $20,000 first-class plane ticket receipt. Exhibit A. This ticket was paid for by the company, yet the expense report lists it as a single travel business trip. The board's official travel policy clearly states this must be for authorized company personnel only. The wire transfer documentation for Global Insight Consulting. $90,000 in unauthorized payments to a shell corporation used to fund the personal expenses of his mistress, Sarah Vance, Marcus Thorne's chief legal officer. That's a clear breach of fiduciary duty. The room was silent, save for the nervous clearing of throats. Mark's face was the color of old ash. "It's a lie. She's fabricating evidence. It's a personal vendetta," he stammered, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Is she?" A new voice cut through the tension. It came from the back of the room, near the double doors. Marcus Thorne stepped forward. He wasn't smiling. He was utterly furious. He was carrying a thick legal file, the proof of his own costly mistake. Thorne walked up to the table. "Mark, you sold Rebecca's company out for a cheap vacation and a fling with my wife. You fed Sarah false Q4 data that Rebecca planted to expose your collusion." Thorne threw his file down. "Based on that false data, I made a massive stock move yesterday, a move that, according to the true internal projections Rebecca just shared with me, will cost my company $50 million by the end of this quarter. You are not just a cheater, Mark. You are a financial liability. You tried to destroy both our companies simultaneously for personal greed." The board members didn't care about the affair. They cared about the $50 million disaster Mark had caused for a major rival, a disaster that was about to become public knowledge and drag our company's reputation down. They cared that he had risked their investments and their own personal fortunes for a mistress. The vote was unanimous. It took less than 3 minutes. Mark was stripped of his titles, his access, and his authority. "Security will escort you out, Mark," I said, picking up the $20,000 ticket receipt from the table. "Don't bother packing your office. We'll handle your severance package, which will be precisely $0, pursuant to the corporate misconduct clause." He looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You think you've won, Rebecca? You have nothing left." "Oh, Mark, I have everything left," I said, holding his gaze. "I have the company. I have the house, and I have the knowledge that I took you down not as a wife, but as your superior." He was escorted out of the building he built, not by his loyal staff, but by the silent security guard. The shame was absolute. The divorce was swift and brutal. I took the house, the controlling company shares, and full custody of the children. Mark was left with little more than his debt and his destroyed reputation. Months later, the dust had settled. I was the interim CEO, navigating the market with Marcus Thorne, now a grudging business ally. One rainy afternoon, I saw Mark in a coffee shop near my office. He looked defeated. His clothes were cheap, his face hollow. He looked like a ghost of the man who flew first class. He spotted me and walked over, desperation etched in his eyes. "Rebecca, I need money," he whispered. "Just a loan. I have nothing. I can't even get an interview." I smiled, a real, genuine, perfectly satisfied smile. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a single, crisp $20 bill. I handed it to him. "Here, Mark, it's exactly what the company spent on your first-class ticket to Paris, minus $19,980. It's for a plane ticket, a one-way ticket to anywhere but here. Just make sure you fly economy this time. The CEO days are over." I didn't wait for his reply. I turned and walked out, leaving him standing there holding the crumpled bill. I saved the company. I saved my financial future. And I learned that the most effective revenge isn't fueled by anger, but by calculating, cold-hearted business strategy. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I served it on a silver platter, first class, and then I signed the papers to liquidate his entire life. The woman who started this story was a naive wife. The woman who ended it was a ruthless CEO, and I never looked back. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I served it on a silver platter, first class, and then I signed the papers to liquidate his entire life. The woman who started this story was a wife. The woman who ended it was a CEO, and I never looked back.